guys. And I hope and trust that God will speak to us as He has always done. He speaks to us in profound ways. And I just couldn't handle just the worship part of it. God does speak to us. And there's just one phrase that I love from the last song that I was saying. The phrase that says, "You've never failed. You've never failed me, and you won't start now." And that's the God He said. A God who has never failed, and He won't start. In fact, He doesn't have any space to start failing His people. Today I want to reflect on this thing that says Christ outside the inn. Christ outside the inn. And if you can turn with me to Luke chapter 2. And I want to read from verse 1 to 7. Luke chapter 2 from verse 1 to 7. And it reads, "In those days Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. And everyone went to his own town to register. Now Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, to the town of David, because he belonged to the house and to the line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to a firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn." This is an old story. An old story that every time you read it is new. And God's people never get tired of reading this story. I've read it so many times. And yes, last night I said to my wife, I'm not even sure what I'm going to be talking about. And after dinner, I sat on the table, and the kids and her says, "No, we'll give you some time to prepare." And I said, "I won't be long." When I sat there, I think I sat there for a couple of minutes, and I said, "Bingo, I've got it." And said, "Are you done?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got it, don't worry, I've got it. I'm sorry." And I joined them. And I woke up. In fact, I didn't, when I get something, sometimes it plays in my head. I didn't have a good night's sleep. Not because I was anxious, but I was wrestling with the passage and the thoughts that I want to share with you today. And in the morning, I woke up and, wow, I never looked at this passage. I never realized I would reach these passages. Jesus is being born in a political storm, in a political space where Caesar Augustus calls for a census. And this is not just a census. This census was to make sure who's paying their taxes and who's evading taxes and who is eligible to go and serve in the army. And this is how political it was. And the Jews were exempted from serving in the army, but they were not exempted from the politics of the day. They were not exempted from paying the taxes. And when Caesar Augustus decrees that there is going to be a census, in fact, the census would come after every 14 years. They would have the census. In Zimbabwe, we have it after how many? After 10, eh? What do you say? People are saying. In Zimbabwe, we have our census after every 10 years. Now, Caesar Augustus is there. And you begin to see that Caesar Augustus is ruling, and that God is in charge. He makes him pronounce a decree so that everything will work out according to his plan. Now, Joseph sets out to go to Bethlehem, and Bethlehem means the house of bread. And oh, what a perfect place for the bread of life to be born in a place called the house of bread. And Jesus, as they go there, you will find that the Jews were so connected to their genealogy. They so clung to their genealogies and the memories of the long extinct tribal relations. They then defied these rules and said, if we want to be counted, we've got to go back where we have the roots. And funny enough, people love their genealogy in their tribes and where they come from. I thought it was very African of us to want that. Alas, I was shocked. I don't know how many times I've driven with people here, and they tell me we used to stay there, and they used to be that there. I love it. One day when I was driving with someone when we were going to Harare, and when we got to that funny little cave, there's that bend, somebody told me, this is where my parents used to stay. And my father was in charge of the post, and I said, well, okay. I shall not bother you those two. We are so connected to our past and our genealogy. And this is where Jesus is being born. Joseph sets out there. But I just want us to reflect a few moments there. There's so many conversations that are so unpronounced in Joseph's head. He was pledged to this lady. And has never been intimate with this lady. And this lady is pregnant. And I'm sure he's saying to himself, and if you read well, you hear that he looked for an option out. He didn't want to embarrass him. He just wanted to sneak out. Imagine the conversations that people love to have when they know that your lady, the one that is getting, is not nowhere near you. You were just shocked. And I can imagine Joseph saying, well, God, you saved it. And there we see a great example of the obedience. Being obedient to God. And when God calls us to be obedient to you, he sets the way for you. And it is interesting to also note that in as much as these guys were being obedient to God, the road was not an easy road. It was not an easy road. And when we come to faith, when we embrace this child who's being born today, it is not a guarantee that the road is easy, but it is a guarantee that he who has called you will never leave you. He who has called you will forever be with you. That's why we celebrated a couple of weeks ago, Emmanuel, God with us. No matter what we go through, he is with us. And when we read this story, I just want us to picture these two different scenes. There is the empire seated in the palace, issuing a decree. And imagine what is going on in this little town of Bethlehem. They show up there. And when they show up, I'm sure word had spread. Because they were so connected, this is their hometown. You know how news gets home before you get there? You wonder who has leaked the news, you know? You think you've got a secret when you go home, everybody say, we already know. I'll tell you a different one. You know, during my school days, we were beaten at school, okay? And I was very not. I was not. And when you were beaten at school, your next prayer was to pray so hard that the news doesn't get home that you've been given a smackage. Because if the news got home, you were going to be given yet another hiding. And it wouldn't end there. Your parents will then take you to school the next morning and say to the teacher, well done, can you please give him yet another? So you would always pray that the news doesn't. And I'm sure somehow news had got to Bethlehem that, you know the girl pledged to Joseph? She's already pregnant, and we are not so sure. And this could have been the other reason the innkeeper said, no, we're not having you here. It's a possibility. Because they didn't want to be caught up in the mix. They said, no, we're not going to. And if there was no room at the inn, I'm sure they could have found somewhere else. Somewhere else. Maybe they didn't have a proper room. You know how Zimbabweans make a plan? And I know this Christmas, some of you are sleeping in the wheel. We make a plan. We make a plan. Kitchens are turned into bedrooms, and we just make a plan so that everybody's what? I'm sure they could have made a plan for Jesus. And what lessons do we draw from this particular story? God is making every event of life. no matter how small or great, God is involved in every detail of our lives. And He's bringing out issues that even the actors are not even so sure what God is doing in their lives. Friends, we need to watch every detail of our lives because God is interested in that life. God is working out in ways that people cannot even make sense of. Outside, they can't make sense, but to those that believed, it made sense. And He is making sure that Christ is born in Bethlehem, a place that is not powerful, a place that was even not righteous. Have you ever asked yourself this question? Can Christ be found there? You know, there are places that we go out that you can't even find God there. I don't know how many times I've been asked, what am I doing in the park? And I'm like, okay, why are you asking? Why are you even here? I said, well, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm just hanging out. And said, no, you are not supposed to be here. And my next immediate question is, who is supposed to be here? Let me tell you a funny. Somebody said it on our boarding group, and I must just tell you, the wrong person won the boarding competition. It was Alan. How could I lose to Alan in the final? But anyway, well done, Alan. So, my wife then says, Alan, when she walks in here, thank you for processing this gentleman. But he sends a message that said, there was a lady who says to the wife, this lady says to his man, you drink beer every day? And the gentleman says, no. And he says, how many do you drink? It says, 3. And he says, okay, how much do they cost for? I'm going to say $10. So you're like $10 a day. Alright? And how many days do you drink? Well, every day. So she makes the calculation. So says, how many years have you been drinking? And it says, for the last 20 plus years. It says, by now you should have been, if you had saved that money, you should have what? Been having a plane, an aeroplane. You should have been on an aeroplane. And the gentleman looks at this lady and says, okay, do you drink? It says, no, I don't drink. It says, do you want an aeroplane? They're just places where we don't expect to see Christ there. And He is a perfect example. If you had got the news that Christ had been born in Bethlehem, where would you go to? You would go to all these fine places, and yet He is in a manger. A manger that was not looking good. A manger that was smelling. You know when we, well done Ken for making this so beautiful. Well done. This is beautiful. And this is so beautiful because we know the meaning of what Christ did. But back in the day, it wasn't this beautiful. It was an ugly, dark place. A place that was... Have you ever been to the Bailey's farm? Or the Franklins? Now, at least at the Franklins, Alan and they stay before you get to where it smells, honestly. But if you go to the Bailey's, I'm looking the other side. If you go to the Bailey's, you are welcomed by this wonderful smell. As you drive there, you're like, and every other time you take this, that is the place where the Messiah is born. A place that was so unpleasant. A place, and here is the lesson. He's born in the darkness. And in that darkness, He brings out the light. And this is a lesson. He identifies with the poorest. You know what? He's born homeless. And even when he dies, he doesn't even own the grave. That is, somebody had to make a plan for him to be what? This is why we are then saying this Christmas, We embrace a Christ who's homeless. We make a home for him in our hearts. And we journey with him. This is why we say we are pilgrims on this. This earth is not our home. Because our Savior didn't have a home. He didn't want us to have a home. We are just passing by. We are just passing by. You know those guys that are appointed ambassadors? When they go into another country to represent their country, they are just there on behalf of the world, but they cannot say, I belong to this country. They are just representing another country. Friends, we represent the government of heaven here on earth. Christ is born in total darkness, and yet he brings that light. My friends, they couldn't find room for him. And still today, he stands on the heart of men, knocking. Revelation 3:20 says, behold, I stand at the door and I am knocking. And whoever opens that door, I will come in and have supper with him. Is there room in your heart for this child that's been born today? Is there room for this unexpected Savior? The man who was born to make a difference in our lives. This Christmas, I hope we are not ignorant. You know why Christ is born outside the inn? It was because of ignorance. Had they known that this was the Messiah, they would have responded differently. He's born outside the inn because of selfishness. If people were generous enough, they would have just made just a small corner for this. You know how we feel pity for pregnant women? Now, I didn't feel pity for one on today's what? Friday. On Wednesday, I went shopping. And I was looking for something for the Christmas. And I got stuck in one of these horses, you know, it was this trolley. We had this winding queue and all that, you know. And then there's this pregnant lady who walks in there. I don't know how many months she's pregnant, but she's heavily pregnant. And somehow people just feel pity for her and say they can go in front and on. And when she gets there, she then feels as if she's entitled. She starts to bully people around her, and people just went on and on and on and say, hey, no, you're not entitled to this. How can you treat us like this because we have given you this? And I was waking up in me, I was fuming in me. And I said, should I join in this chorus or should I what? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? So I just went to it and just tapped on it. And I said, I think you've said enough. Please, child. And then I think you've said enough. Please, just respect us. I'm sure somebody could have felt pity for Mary. But because of the selfishness that is so in us, we always think the best for us. We always want everything that is good to come to us. And because of ignorance and because of selfishness, people are still shutting Christ out of their lives. This Christmas, is there room in your heart for this baby boy to be born? And I hope the praise and worship team will do the right thing. Is there room for this child to be born in your heart? Christ is standing outside the inn, and you welcome him in your heart. Joy to the world, the Savior is born. He's standing outside, looking for a room in your heart. Would you be kind enough to open this door? Now, you know, when he's waiting outside, I wish we could know the good news that he's bringing. I wish we could have the agents to want to open this door. You know when you are anxious, when you know there's something good there in your way to end, now I've been intended to be a murungu now, you know. I showed up in church this time, and I was handed over a plastic bag full of gifts. But I was told one day, you will not open them until Christmas. And I went home. You know when you're all alone, you're all alone, but I could hear it say, you will not open it. And all my kids were also saying, can you open it? And I said, wait, the time is what is coming. And we showed up to another place and we given this, and the kids are just excited. Can you say? And I said, no. One condition. You go to church first, and we all come, and in the meantime, I'm also as anxious as they are. I'm also looking forward to this. So I can't wait to finish the service and go home. But here's the lesson there. He's waiting, so full of gifts, so full of life. I just walk with this expectation, this excitement that says, I'm going to open and let him come in. When he comes in, he takes over. And he takes over in a brilliant way. Christ outside the inn. Will you welcome